Douglas Dwayne Dietrich, behind the scenes for so long in and around the U.S. military, in and around some guy named the Temple of Set or some, that satanic crap that is going on, and some guy had met what's his name, Michael Aquino, and Ted Gunderson. Somebody's out there to try to associate Ted Gunderson and the Church of Satan. I mean, it's nuts. It's crazy. They're absolute Looney Toonies making this charge, and then I'm supposed to be in with Ted to knock off Horowitz. I mean, it's brazenly insane. What do you think of all of this stuff that's going on?
Well, thankfully, I feel certainly that I'm new to the environment. I'm glad that I was able to miss a lot of the entanglements that apparently have developed, but I do think that it is certainly a stretch. I think that I certainly have my differences with the FBI. I feel that the Federal Bureau of Investigations is a heinous organization. They're not your friend, but certainly...
Ted, it's now the FBI. I mean, right, before I thought that, Ted wasn't a friend immediately, even though I've known him for 35 years. Right. But obviously the idea going in another direction. Right, but obviously the idea of Ted Gunderson necessarily being connected with Col Aquino or any satanic organization. I don't know his past, of course, but it does sound... I don't see any myself. I've certainly never run into that. I worked with Col Aquino as his liaison for a decade, and I certainly am no proselytizer for the Church of Satan or the Temple of Set, but I did have to become familiar with their organization and their infrastructure out of working with him, and I certainly... Ted Gunderson is someone I never ran into. Indeed, he was in a totally different geographic area. This Aquino was actually the official spokesman for the satanic religion for the U.S. military. I never even knew the U.S. military had a division along that line. Right. Tell us about it. Well, Col Aquino organized the 1st Earth Battalion of Wicca, or Warlocks, and this was done through the Delta organization, and this is not to be confused with Task Force Delta, which was a group of honorable special forces, commandos, and special operatives that was disastrously misapplied in the attempt to rescue hostages from Iran by the Jimmy Carter administration. Rather, this Delta organization is a think tank, and Task Force Delta is its name, fully and officially. And Task Force Delta was a think tank that was contracted or formulated by the U.S. Army to deal with crushing personnel problems in the wake of the Vietnam War and the cessation of the draft. Now Frankie, what do you call it where somebody gets offed in the military? Oh, fragged. Fragged. That's right. I keep thinking, what in the world would cause somebody to off or frag an officer? Well, during the Vietnam War, the conflict was so intensive, as I try to emphasize as a former Marine. What I can tell you, and there are many Marines who just don't even acknowledge this, because many of them want to uphold the cult of the World War II Marine, the cult of Iwo Jima, and that's fine. What I'm saying doesn't discredit those titanic battles in any way, but the World War II Marine really, if he was quote-unquote lucky, would see maybe 4 battles in the 4 years of World War II. You couldn't be in all the battles on all the islands because they're just too far apart, and they would get some time to recuperate in between each of these titanic, cataclysmic engagements with the Japanese. There would be months of logistical buildup before the next big push. Whereas in Vietnam, the average Marine was flown by helicopter from one fire zone to another every single day. So they spent every single day exposed in enemy fire. And as a result, they got extremely frustrated and extremely battle fatigued, and they would take it out on their officers. Like Apocalypse Now, right?
Yeah, well, Apocalypse Now certainly shows the mood. It shows the mood. It may not be accurate in some depictions. You don't go surfing in a firefight, but aside from that, there were other things that they were portraying in Apocalypse Now that were right on the mark. Certainly, Xavier Kilgore, the colonel in the film, who's portrayed as turning on the flight of the Valkyrie while he's attacking the Vietnamese, that reflects what Colonel Aquino was doing as a PSYOPs officer with the 6th PSYOPs Battalion in 3rd Combat Zone, Vietnam, where he was experimenting with disorienting audio weapons to shock the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese army into breaking battle formation, breaking ambush. All the rest of this attempt was with sound warfare, the broadcast of demonic screams from their helicopters. And that didn't cut it because the helicopters kept getting shut down. So he decided that he could call on real demonic forces to come out of other dimensions or out of the aether to impact the Vietnamese.
Real demonic forces.
That's correct.
Coming out of the vapor or the chemtrails or whatever the hell that was, right? So the death dump. So in fact, the military people now they deny that there's anything in these toxic flushings that are going on over our city.
Mm-hmm.
How do you address that? How do you address the apathy, the ignorance, the arrogance of these bastards who simply deny that, what's before them?
It's hard to imagine something like that occurring without the military being involved. But at the same time, it's very much out of my league in the sense that it's kind of beyond my area of specialization. I wouldn't be able to address that and give it the justice it deserves.
I'm talking about the mindset.
Of
the individuals who can take toxic poisons in the military, bring them up over a civilian city, and drop this shit upon them and kill the babies and bring about Alzheimer's and everything else.
It would strike me that
and then justify it.
It would strike me that if someone were doing that they would have to be so indoctrinated that they felt that what they were doing was somehow in the cause of good, or they would have to be so robotic that they were just obeying orders without thought.
And how about in the cause of evil?
Now that's an interesting point. Isn't that interesting? Yes, because of Colonel Aquino and the saturation of the military with satanic influence, or the political ideology of Satanicism. That's conceivable.
I've never used the word Satanicism. I mean, it starts to get you thinking, but I mean, some people just don't put all of the pieces together. And when you get these pieces together, then you see an entirely different picture, the big picture. Once you see that, then everything else starts to fall in line. And that's why you are key. Don't go. My friend, I've got a friend over here who's seen some of the death dumps that have come over San Francisco.
Right.
From the viewpoint of a ladder, he's looking up and doing some things on a roof, and then he's turning around, and then later on in the day he looks down, and it once was a clear day, and he looks down and everything's sort of dark like a cloud. Mm-hmm. And he looks up again, and there is a cloud. Mm-hmm. Is there not a cloud of confusion that is deliberately laid down by the military to keep these poor, dumb, and I know you've been in the military, bastards, believing that this thing is for the good and for justice and for honor. And like Kissinger said, military men are dumb, stupid animals. And I agree that if you pick up a gun and go out and fire at somebody you don't know, for a cause you don't believe in or can't even explain, and these guys are fighting for, against and killing you, who the hell is behind the scenes pulling the strings?
Well, if the military is involved, as I said, an operation of that order of magnitude, it would be hard not to imagine that military equipment or services weren't being used. But at the same time, we don't know specifically if it's the military that is being necessarily applied here. It might be a civilian aircraft company. We have to keep in mind that...
We're talking about Evergreen? Evergreen working as a contract killers for the CIA.
Well, I was about to bring up the example of Air America. Certainly during the height of Air America, when the CIA was indeed smuggling narcotics out of Southeast Asia.
We're talking about heroin out of Southeast Asia.
That's correct.
Which was given to these guys in the military to build up a base of users. This is done deliberately. Sometimes these narcotics were in the body cavities of men shipped over from South Vietnam. That's all, the whole Air America story. And Air America was bought by Evergreen. Evergreen was bought.
Okay.
Brought into this whole situation, and they bought Air America. They're out of Penal Air Force Base in Arizona.
I haven't kept track of them since the 80s, since the documents I was working with, but it makes sense. I mean, I'm certain that, it wouldn't surprise me. So, but nevertheless, the point I was making was that at its height in the Vietnam War, Air America was the largest civilian airlines in the entire world. TWA, Pan Am, all the other civilian airlines in the world put together didn't equal the Air America fleet of civilian transport.
You see planes going over and over, back and across, all across this country, it's all across the world. Air America is about, it's just huge. Is it the largest civilian...
Well, it was at that time.
Yes,
it was at that time. But so I was just making a point that it's conceivable.
Nothing's changed.
Well, it's conceivable that it could be a private corporate entity in service of an agency that is conducting a chemtrail campaign, if indeed one is being
contract
conducted.
Killers.
Conceivably. It's out of my league, the entire chemtrail phenomenon.
Well, when you see Air Auschwitz, and you're going to be given a copy.
Oh, great. Thank you.
In fact, you may be in Air Auschwitz too. Or when one dumps chemicals, Agent Orange, what is it? That stuff they call it? They dumped and dumped and dumped and dumped.
Yeah, it's Agent Orange. Agent Orange was used to defoliate, believe it or not, even in Korea. So there are many, many Korean War veterans who are suffering from the Agent Orange effect.
I want to call you Dietrich. Dietrich, of course, this is good for the people, right? It was healthy? The Agent Orange?
No, of course not.
What?
No.
I mean... Well, tell them it was not good for the people.
It was not good for the people. No, as a matter of fact, to give you an example of this, the Liver Cancer Symposium, the Global Liver Cancer Symposium, for many, many years, was always opened and closed in its conference hours by Vietnamese. So many Vietnamese civilians suffer from the deleterious effects of Agent Orange. People talk about the GIs and the GIs suffering from Agent Orange. Well, think of how it affects the civilian population that still has to live there in Vietnam. So it's disgusting. It's an atrocity.
I'm shocked. Shocked. Agent Orange was not, I thought it was something, the orange, like lemon, or Agent Strawberry. Then the U.S. military was taking your tax dollars to buy the poisons to drop on these people to kill them. These are civilians. Now, there's a lot of people that were listed as dying, as a result of this, but in the military, there is officers that I see at the Vietnam War Veterans Wall Memorial. I don't see all of those names. Maybe all of this is just false information. I don't know.
The civilians who died in Vietnam?
No, and not just the civilians, but in the military.
The fragging?
The fragging.
Right. Well,
the fragging is taking a gun over and blowing the brains out of military officers. I don't see all of their names. I don't see all of the names that there would be. If your story was true, wouldn't this
to put this into perspective? Put this into perspective. Of course, it was not our U.S. government that set up the Vietnam Memorial Wall. It was a very conscientious young Asian emigre, a young lady from the Republic of South Vietnam who exmigrated to the United States, and as a refugee felt so grateful for the sacrifices of American men in defending her anti-communist republic, that she conceptualized, designed, and ultimately funded the establishment of that Vietnam Memorial Wall. Other parties became party to it.
Well, there's a guy named Wheeler who was just recently found in a dumpster, right? He's one of the guys.
Who
yes.
claimed he was involved in the making of the wall, but that somehow I don't know. I've never heard of him being involved with it. That was the first time.
He was now involved. He's involved in the compost. So what do you call that stuff that you
compost,
mix?
That's right.
Compost?
Yes, he's mulching right now.
Mulching.
But the in terms of to finish my thought process on this. It's very difficult to get someone's name on the wall. Anyone who's missing in action is not on the wall. There are many people who got critically injured in Vietnam, but thanks to medical transport, were flown to Hawaii and ultimately to the American mainland if they lived that long. Many of them would die en route, many would die in Hawaii, many of them would die in the American mainland. Those are not listed on the wall, even though they were killed in Vietnam. They are not listed as battlefield fatalities because they did not die in theater. Sorry so much. Col Aquino and all the other guys who was dealing with it right now.
I knew Nguyen Cao Ki.
What?
I knew Nguyen Cao Ki, and I had been very much involved with Madame Bui Tuet Minh, who was born in Saigon, married the Minister of Finance, and was involved in her early life from Saigon to Hanoi, and we just about became an item. But I couldn't stand the damn loud music, just going nuts at all of the Vietnamese parties. So.
Wow. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I wish something had come of it. What is it that you want me to speak of specifically? Or?
Well, I don't know where Gary is, but we're talking about the military guys who died from
the fragging. Well, I think
fragging.
I mean, yes. Thank you. To continue on that train of thought. So the names that are on the wall, there's 57,000 of them. They are by no means complete for the reasons I explained. They do not contain MIA. They do not contain people who died out of theater. So there are far more men. And to put this into perspective, keep in mind that there were at least 600,000 men, at least, in 1968 in theater Vietnam. So that's well over 500,000 men. If you multiply that by the 11, 12 years of the Vietnam War, from 1964, when advisors started trickling in, to 1975, when we Vietnamized the war, then you're talking about a good 11 years. But even if you're conservative and say just 9 years of intensive conflict for about 500,000 men in theater each one of those years, we're still talking about a good, almost 11 million men, realistically, because of the cycling, which was not all at once. The cycling was, of course, coming simultaneously, depending on who was drafted when, depending on when they got into boot camp, etc. You're talking about a good 11 to 12 million men cycled through Vietnam. So of that 11 to 12 million men, 20,000 officers fragged is an extremely small percentage.
20,000 officers fragged. That means you take a gun and you go bam, 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 right? And you blow off his head.
Or a grenade. Yes.
Or a grenade, right?
Yes, that's right.
Fragging
so Vietnam was the most dangerous war in the history of mankind to serve as an officer, and it eviscerated the U.S. Officer Corps. Yes, I destroyed documents pertaining to this.
What was your rank?
It was Lance Corporal, yes.
Lance Corporal. I was keep thinking, I want to call this guy a colonel or a lieutenant colonel. I've got a close friend, and we did several things, Lieutenant Colonel James Bogreitz.
Oh, Bogreitz, yes, he's in a world all his own. That's, he's fine. He was an American hero. At the same time, he
blew away about 200 Viet Cong, or what I call Viet Nazis.
I know some
North Viet Nazis.
I know some people blame Bogreitz for messing up the MIA rescue situation because they felt that he was too vocal about it before the operation went underway, and encouraged.
Well, he was underway, and the station chief in the CIA
different sides of that story.
in Saigon announced that he and his crew, Lance Trimmer, and the guys that I knew, were coming into, this is afterwards, for the rescue mission.
Right.
They announced that he was coming on the radio. So when they got up there, the people with guns in their hands from the Soviet Cong or the North Viet Nazis were ready and waiting, and they blew them away. They killed 2 or 3 guys, thanks to the information, not this, but real information that they were coming. And I had talked on one case, and let me explain this. The fellow was telling me that he was going into a certain area where they had given the coordinates and ordered a shelling of this particular area. And they said, "No, look, we're in this particular position. We'll give you the coordinates of the other. You know, we got to make sure that you go over our head into that area." Mm-hmm. When the order was given, everybody's, you know, standing around and they're waiting for the bad guys to get it. The guns were turned on the guys who gave the information, the good guys, our guys. The guns were turned on them, and it blew them away.
Right.
And the guy got up and he says, "Look, you crazy son of a bitch. I mean, you blew us away, not the enemy." And so they changed and gave the orders again. They blew them away again. Now, Pickering, who was the head of the CIA operations in there and was one of the guys who this information came to, had gone to Cambodia.
Right.
And at the end of the war, some people came out to kill Pickering. Did things like that ever happen? Or was this just this crazy guy was telling me something like this? In other words, the guns were deliberately turned on our guys.
It depends on the context of the situation. The situation is alien to my frame of reference in this.
But I mean, they were talking about franking.
I mean, well, if we're
fragging,
talking about fragging, yes, fragging was quite common. But you know, you bring up a specific situation, and I can't address specific situations because I was dealing with statistical documents.
I mean, things like that.
I'm sure that things somewhat similar to that occurred. I mean, certainly I read situation after situation report that tended to reflect various things, but what you're speaking of sounds almost political, almost like some kind of intrigue or something.
Right. I mean, this happened with Bo Gritz.
Oh yeah, well with Bo, anything could happen. that's Bo. I mean, I'm sure he's not a braggart, but he was operating with several things that were very unconventional. So I expect anything to go on with Bo happens. You know, it's going to be unconventional.
Lance and Bo, they came over to my house in the Ventura area and stayed. And
so you met Bo Gritz? Oh, my father would have been delighted. Oh,
Bo's an old friend.
Right, that's great.
So I not just met Bo, I was involved with.
Right.
Some of that. You know, he came back after seeing General Kun Sa in the Golden Triangle.
Right.
And
now this is after the war.
Yes, after the war, and he had he had heard that there was this war going on in Shanland, and then he decided, well, he's going to go up because he heard that some MIAs, missing in action, were behind the lines. Right. So he went in. He heard that Kun Sa had these things, and he went up this trail, sort of a mule trail. Right. Got up into the area, came in, saw General Kun Sa, actually had an interview with him on film, and I've got that.
Great. No, that's great. That's impressive.
And he said, well, you know, you look like a good guy. Why are you making growing all this heroin, and why are you bringing it back into the country? It's killing our guys. Can't you stop it? Can't we make some sort of arrangement? And Kun Sa says, well, yeah, if you give us the same amount of money that we're getting from the dope and 10%, we'll get out of it. So Bo went back to the White House, and he says, my God, listen, I've got the information. We're going to get rid of the biggest drug dealer in the world, right? Yeah. Kun Sa. Yeah. And Bo came in and says, Bo, there's no interest in that.
Right.
He said, what? There's no interest in that.
Right. No, I mean, well, that's not surprising to me at all. If that story is true, that doesn't surprise me.
Listen, I know you have to go.
Yeah.
But can we use this on film?
Sure.
Good, great. Now, this is a coalition operation.
Yeah, Desert Shield, Desert Storm.
So you're in favor of saving our guys and getting them out of harm's way, but they seem to, like, the same operation is going on, drug operations in Afghanistan. That's why this thing is going on. It's not, if they wanted to end the war, they would just simply pull out.
No,
give them back their country.
Yes. Well, yeah, it all has to do with drugs. Yes, keeping the drugs flowing. So that I could go into for hours, and hopefully we'll get an opportunity to do that one of these days soon. Yeah.
But you're saying that the U.S. military is involved in?
Yes.
What?
Drug smuggling.
Have I got your right ear?
Yeah, yes, that's right.
Tell them.
Yes, the United States military is heavily involved in supporting narco-terrorists and narco-terrorist regimes. So it expedites drug smuggling the world over. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, that's right.
God bless.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hilder. I appreciate that opportunity. Okay. Take care now.